So there's this woman, and she's in quite a big hurry, and she's rushing down Central Avenue, just going as fast as she can and wanting to make it through all the green lights, and she's just very stressed. And so she comes upon a light, the guy's in front of her, and the light's just barely turned yellow, so she was very confident he was going to go ahead and go through, but he didn't. He just slammed on brakes right there, and she just went, can you believe it? Can you believe it? And she started, doing sign language out the window, calling him various names in communication and things like that, and just kind of laying on her horn, just ridiculous energy. She could have used that song, Let Your Love Flow, let me tell you, but she was just way out of source with herself. Well, by this time, the police officer, because they're great in Pinellas County, kind of noticed what she was doing and said, whoa, what in the world is going on? So he pulls her over. Ma'am, I need to see your license. I need to see your registration. So he says, here's the thing, you're going to have to go down to the station with me. She was like, oh, wow. So he puts her in a cell, and a couple hours pass, and then he comes back to get her. He says, ma'am, it's okay for you to go now. She said, well, thank you, but I'm not really sure even what I've done. He said, well, you have to understand it from my point of view. He said, I start pulling out behind you, and he said, and I look at this carrying on that you're doing with this man, and he said, and you have bumper stickers all over your car, global peace, honk if you love Jesus, World Day of Prayer 2015, we are one, be the change. And he said, I got to tell you, I thought you were driving a stolen car. I've had the good pleasure in my own life, as well as people that I have had the good fortune of knowing in my life, to see how many people's lives are stolen and not being true to who they really are. I see it so many times in the way people are living in certain conditions and circumstances, certain experiences that they've yet to ever have, that one connection that could surely be made, but yet their opportunities, those spaces they're living stolen lives because they're living life because of what someone said or didn't say, or an experience that happened or didn't happen, or some kind of heartache that has left them stopped and part of the walking dead in our society today. There are so many people. Myself, for many years, my life was stolen. I allowed my life to be stolen because I wanted to be validated. I wanted to be acknowledged for who I was. And I was just too weird and too far out there for anybody to get me. And, it's really cool now, but back then it wasn't. It was painful. It hurt. It was hard. It was not easy. It was challenging. There's something very distinctive when everyone in your family tells you you're going to go to hell, and you're just a little kid just walking through life. And so this subject matter is very near and dear to my heart because it's not like I had a great idea of a book that would be timely to put out in the marketplace. It's a book that through my own experiences and through my own passion of all the times in which I didn't want to be here, not necessarily physically, but any other way that mattered through the course of my life, that those times that I denied myself or sabotaged myself or literally almost drank myself to death in that awakening, I wanted to offer ways in which I had been able to overcome some of those great obstacles that had allowed my life to be stolen in the first place. And I wanted to show literally in our world, because when I got in the meditation about 7 years ago that the book I was supposed to write was entitled, When Did You Die? I mean, I thought, wow, well, this is going to be interesting because in our society, people will avoid that word at all costs. We don't want to talk about dying in our society, even though the book is not talking about a literal death. It's talking about an energy death, yes? And I thought it's just going to be interesting because in our generation, we're all hoping that somebody will still come up with a pill that we don't have to die, that we just get to be here for a very long time. Some of you are laughing, but some of you are shaking your head. You hope that too, don't you?
Yes, yes.
But Gary Busey said very clearly, he was a Hollywood actor, and in his time of a lot of partying, he had a near-fatal, almost death motorcycle accident, and he went to the other side, so to speak, and he came back and he offered such wisdom as to tell people that the secret of life is not whether you will live or die. It's the parts of ourselves that we allow to die while we're living. Being born is what maybe as a soul we have control over, perhaps. Dying is perhaps as a soul what we have control over. It's not conscious. I don't think we go, okay, this is the day necessarily. But what we truly have control over would be the parts of our heart that close in our lifetime, the parts that stop being willing to love full out, the parts that stop wanting to play full out. That the more you've been hurt is more of a reason for you to love even greater, even more dynamic than you ever have been before. So it's how to awaken that part of us that brings us back to that wonder child that we are and that we have always been. Do you resonate with what I'm communicating about? Well, in the book, I actually ask about 25 questions about the level of energy that could have been taken in your life. It could be that you've had some accidents in your life, automobile, motorcycle, lawnmower, whatever thing you might have been driving. Oh yeah, I had all three of those actually. Oh, just occurred to me. Okay, angel. I have a real personal angel channeling with me today. Thank you for reminding me of that. I forgot. Or you've had major surgery. And pretty much all surgery is major. We know that, but you've had that. It could be that you've been hurt or your heart has been broken once or twice in your life. You could measure it by also knowing within a 24-hour window, is there something that you could have said that you felt guided to say, but you hesitated to say. It could be that you have clothes in your closet that no longer fit or no longer fit your world. There are many different ways in which there is those subtle energetic shutdowns that happen that prevent people from living a thriving life. And that's what I wanted to offer in these 7 weeks, is through the willingness to participate and do some of these processes, that there will be a new awakening that is guaranteed that will happen within you. It's unavoidable if you put your whole self in. Yes? So in that space, one of the processes that I talk about is I talk about how many years ago, how I sat down one day. It was kind of probably a rainy day like today. I kind of took the whole weekend. And I cut some sheets of paper, white sheets of paper with my pen, and through an exercise with my shaman teacher, what I wrote on all of these papers were events that had happened in my life, crisis or moments or times my heart ached or time of my addiction or whatever it was. And I wrote them all down on a sheet of paper. And there were the times that I remembered in my life that I said, where were you, God? Were you off that week or what? You know, were you on vacation? What? Did you leave me? I mean, where were you? I don't get it. If you're so all that, why did you let this list happen? And that would be the list I was toting around like a piece of luggage as I was going through everyday life. And I would also say, knowing that God doesn't make mistakes, why do I feel like on so many sheets of this paper it was implied that I was one? So how could that be true? So I wrote them all down, but then I was willing to look at them a different way. I was willing to look at the list, the sheets of paper, and for every event that I had seen as hard, where I felt disconnected, where I did not feel that spiritual and that essence, I started seeing how I would not be who I am had I not had those experiences. So then I started having a whole different awareness, energetically speaking, of how there's this whole difference between our life story, our earthly story, and our creation story. And I started then looking at the wisdom of the Buddha and the wisdom of Jesus and looking at other wayshores and all their wisdom. And I looked at what was their distinction. What did they happen to know, some kind of secret? What did they know that we don't seem, in mass population, I'm not implying that you don't, but in mass population, people don't seem to understand. Most people live their life according to their earthly story. You know, these were my parents, this is where I was born, this is what my mom did for a living or didn't, this is what my dad did, these are my cousins, these are the schools I went to, this is the degree I have, and this is who I am. And, you know, I'll probably live to be a certain age, I'll probably achieve a certain amount of stuff financially, well, because that's the way my parents were. And that's what people taught me. And that's the place where many, many people, without ever questioning it, that's where they live. And I'll only experience so much happiness. You know, my parents, they made their marriage work, but they weren't that happy. But, you know, I'm just trying to do a shy better bit than that. So people live in the standard of, this is my earthly story. Do you agree with that? And that, they have all kind of reasons and all kind of excuses of why they just can't exceed that, because they're looking at a paradigm of who modeled before them and the people that they knew. Whereas with the teachings of Jesus, it's even in Scripture, where he started making a distinction that there was a big difference between his earthly story, Mary and Joseph, and the life that he had and who he grew up around. He started making this clear distinction from that to, I only am in the ways of my Father, the ways I'm created, the essence of God, the Father within me. Father and I are one, he would say. And he really drew from that wellspring. He really believed it, and it was very evident in his healing work. Yes? He even said in Scripture, if you're doubting me and you're a Bible scholar, well, let's look at this because it's in there in Matthew. It says, while he was speaking to the crowds, his mother and his brothers were standing outside. They were wanting to speak with him. And someone told him, look, your mother and your brothers are standing outside wanting to speak to you. But to the one who had told him this, Jesus replied, who is my mother and who are my brothers? And pointing to his disciples, his chosen family, he said, here are my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the will of my Father in heaven, consciousness, is my brother and sister and mother. And so that is, it is a, you can clap, it's okay, it's church. So that is the outpicturing of where we are working at the realm of really supporting people in revealing who they truly are. We're not working so much with their earthly story, though there's pain from that, and there's challenges from that, and there's sadness, and there's crisis, and who hasn't come from a dysfunctional family of some kind. You know, yes, we are addressing that. We're not denying that. That describes us, but what defines us is our creation story. And when you live from a realm of, I now align with the work my soul is here to do, and you are really aligning with your creation story, everything that happens in your life, you don't disassociate with it, you don't avoid it, you don't dread it, you don't close off from it, you open up to it because you know it's going to create the greater out of you. Does that connect? And so it's like you then look at all the tragedies, you look at when your heart was broken, you look at the people you lost, the people that walked out on you, the people that called you names and all those things, and you look into the eyes and the window of all of that and you go, thank you for creating me. Say that with me. Thank you for creating me, because that's what expands us. If we haven't been expanded, we aren't able to do the mighty work that we came here to do. If we just sit in the comfortable of, you know, well, my parents didn't do it and I'm not going to be able to do it neither. You know, that's a whole different realm of living in that power and in that energy. So it's how do we do that? You look at Michelangelo, for example. Michelangelo was born in 1475. And when he was born, his father, Judge, the father, saw him and saw the stars and went, wow, my son, he's going to be holy, he's going to be sacred, he's going to be all that, which is why he named him Michelangelo, Angelo meaning angel. And yet his son, all he wanted to be occupied with was his creation story. Michelangelo never spent time in his earthly story of being like his dad and being like his uncles, and they couldn't stand it. because they wanted him to be a scholar. They wanted him to be highly educated and to do something like with law or something else. And Michelangelo, all he wanted to do was paint. And his father and his uncle beat him time and time and time again, but they could not beat his dream out of him. And of course, he's known in a language throughout the world because he allowed himself to be truly created. That's the sadness, is people that get so close to who they could be, and they never realize. They get beyond what they already know about themselves into this new dimension of what could be possible. It's very powerful. I think of the story of Cooper the dog, a lab dog. He carried around with his family this tennis ball everywhere he went, slobbering with that ball. No matter what they did, no matter what they promised him, he would not let that ball drop. And he'd aggravate him, He'd try to get it from him, and he wouldn't give it up. Well, at one particular time, the family cat died. So the family decided to really do a ritual around it and to really honor the cat. So they dug a grave. And so when the family was gathered, and there was Cooper with his tennis ball, and so they put the cat down into the grave, and there's Cooper, and he walks up, and he takes the tennis ball, and he just drops it right into the ground, just drops it right there to go with the cat. So he had given it up for love. That's what I'm asking you to be willing to do today. In the essence of awakening, what are you willing to drop? What are you willing to give up? What are you willing to let go of? All in the name of the love, not the love that you know about right now, but the love that is still knocking on your door, is still asking you to awaken at a deeper level. What could that be like for yourself? Because as you declare, I now align with what my work is, what my soul came here to do, things will dissipate. Things will organically drop away from your life because you will then be in alignment with who you are. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
A few years ago, I was at Piccadilly Restaurant over on 34th Street, and there was this little girl. She was just vibrant, and she had so much energy about her, and she was just beautiful. And she looked at me and she said, "Hi!" And I looked back at her. I was having dinner by myself, and I went, "Hi!" And her grandfather was right there beside her. I found out later that's who he was, and he was going. And she said, "I got to go to the bathroom." He said, "Well, get on out of here then." So she went to the restroom, and he looked at me and he said, "She's a royal pain." And I looked at him and I said, "You're very fortunate to have her in your life. You're very fortunate to have her in your life." And she came back from the restroom and she looked at me and she said, "I'm from South Carolina." I said, "Well, I'm from South Carolina too." And in that moment, she just looked at me and she did a full somersault right in front of me, right in front of everybody in the restaurant. And when she landed, she said, "I am 7." I will always be grateful to that little girl. That little girl, she changed my life that day, she did. She opened my heart in a new way. I was able to see my life through her window. It wasn't an accident. She was there with a begrudged grandfather. It wasn't an accident. She was from South Carolina. See, these are the signs that happen all around you when you ask to align with the work that you came to do. That little girl, I've always wanted to see her again so I could thank her. I could say thank you for waking me up because I am 7. This is who I am. Get it, don't get it, it doesn't matter. But this is what's going down. Okay, so anyway, God bless you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here in my life. Thank you. Thank you.